Hello, everybody. Welcome to Fully Charged. I'm Lorencino Estrada.
And I am Reno Del Toro.
And this is the NFL podcast where we talk NFL free agency currently. We're doing a top 100 list. We also do fantasy football and weekly predictions during the season. Now, Reno, it has been a pretty busy free agency period. Now, we're doing the top 100 list, but man, this free agency, it's been hectic, it's been wild, and just a lot of faces going to a lot of different teams.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about it. I mean, some big names that we saw were going to get traded or that were going to sign to a different team actually did happen. We talked a couple weeks ago about Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown. Both of them, one got traded, one signed with another team. Earl Thomas signed with another team. Almost every guy that you thought would be a free agent has already signed with a team, but the most impactful trade happened also this week with Odell Beckham Jr. going to the Cleveland Browns. I think that was shocking, but it's the NFL. This free agency has been amazing. This league year has been amazing. Of course, still more moves to make the remainder of the couple of days, but we have all the way until training camp in August, and preseason games start to kick off in July and in August. So there's a lot of time for free agents to sign and pick wherever they choose. But as of right now, a great stretch heading into the 2019 season.
Yeah, just so much movement right now. Today, Ryan Tannehill goes to the Titans. That's another move. We saw Nick Foles go to Jacksonville as well. Got the big players, got the quarterbacks moving, which is the most important position in football. And it's been fun, You touched on Le'Veon Bell going to the Jets. And, all the big ones are kind of out the way now. Now we're just kind of getting in those positional needs. And, we still got some pretty decent free agents up. T.J. Yeldon, Jared Cook as well, Tyler Eifert. There's still some decent names to go after, And although the excitement, I believe, is going to start going down a little until we get into late April, and that's when we're going to see the NFL draft come around. Maybe we'll see some players get traded and, of course, the picks. But it's been an exciting offseason so far, that's for sure.
100%. I feel like there's some more things to come to. I mean, you talked about the remaining free agents, but, I mean, NFL teams can trade now, whatever they can, and the draft's coming up in less than a month. Now we have pro days coming in, and we already saw what happened with Kyler Murray in his pro day. But now we get to see other pro days and what other guys can look at. I mean, we saw the combine, we saw how they performed, but now the pro days, we get to actually see what they can do on one-on-one drills and what they can, give to an NFL team, what their services can be come April when they're available to get selected for the draft. That's the most important thing coming up for the NFL. But this week has just been a lot of news regarding trades and signings. So I want to say kudos to Ian Rappaport, Adam Schefter, guys that have actually gone on there and have the sources to get the information out to the public. Kudos to them. But you know what? We're done with free agency, Lawrence. We got a list to get over. Last time we were here, we had 100 to 91. Now we start at number 90, Lawrence. Are you ready for this?
I am, yeah, and I'm especially ready for 90 because he happens to be a player from my team, and that's pass rusher Yannick Ngakoue, who had a pretty. I mean, this season was a very good season for Ngakoue. A little bit undershadowed because obviously the success of the Jaguars was not what it was in 2017. But he goes for 9.5 sacks, and he has continued to show why he is going to be one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. He was coming off a 12.5 sack season, and so young in his career. Keep in mind, he was a third-round pick. He has absolutely exceeded the expectations for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and he's going to be a building piece for that team for a very long time. Now, pass rushers these days, they're making a lot of money, and when his time comes, he's going to be asking for a lot of money. But Yannick Ngakoue, being able to learn under a guy like Calais Campbell and going to work with knowing that defense, the way that it's built, the way that he can succeed in that defense, it's helped him out in his career so far. He's definitely a very good player.
You talk about a guy that is probably going to be one of the best pass rushers in the NFL in the next couple of years. He's already had, he had 12 sacks last season. He had 9.5 this season. He's in his contract year coming up. He's going to get paid a lot of money, which Jacksonville hates to see it go because they still have to pay another young player who will be in this list, and Jalen Ramsey later down the line. But you talk about a guy that has so much talent. It's this man right here. I remember seeing that game against New England where they ended up winning that one. You talk about a guy that brings terror to the offensive line, and he brings the terror. Last season, playoffs against the Steelers, he was one of those guys that just made the Steelers' offensive line, non-existent, because he's that guy that can change a game, and he's done it with an interception in his career. He's forced fumbles in his career. He's got the sacks, got the tackles. He's very young. You touched on it, third-round pick. This guy has all the makings of becoming one of the best defensive ends in the league. And, for a guy that's, fast and has the strength on top of it, I mean, the sky's the limit for this guy. He will get paid. He will get paid. I guarantee you. He'll probably get, I don't know if he'll get paid, Jadeveon Clowney money. I don't know. It just depends and see what he wants. But if he can get a contract just like Trey Flowers got this offseason for Detroit, that's a good payday for him, especially because he's a young superstar in the making and he has a lot of potential. And, I'm really excited to see what he's got down the line, because I've already seen him in a couple of games against my team. I've seen him against, some of the best offensive lines in the AFC, and he's just really, really good. So, Yannick Ngakoue, one of the best players up and coming in the NFL, Zeno.
Yeah, and just to continue on Ngakoue, you said it. Jacksonville's got to pay Ngakoue and Jalen Ramsey. Both of them are going to be in contract years. Jacksonville picks up the fifth-year option on Ramsey this offseason. I'm pretty sure one of these deals, whether it be Ramsey or Ngakoue, is going to get done before training camp. That's what I'm assuming. I think that they don't want to sign both of them at the same time, because then that's just going to be a cap situation nightmare. So I can't imagine them trying to get them both done in the next offseason. So I think one of them will enter training camp with a new contract. I think there's potential for a holdout as well. Players want their money, especially with all the concerns of safety in the league now. Player wants to be insured, down the line. So I think one of them will get a contract down the line. And I think if that's not the case, either one of them, Ngakoue or Jalen Ramsey, he's going to hold out. And one more, and the stat that I want to point out with Ngakoue, 33 quarterback hits in 2018. That's the third best in the NFL. Guys who are in front of him, Fletcher Cox, we obviously know how good he is and how talented he is, and number one, Aaron Donald. So if he's in that top three list with those guys, he's a really, really good player.
100%. I mean, he'll be up this ranks in a couple of years, but 90 is a good place for him right now. To start with this list, Lorenzino.
Yeah, and another player that we're going to talk about, his season was cut off short this year, and when he went down, Reno, that it was not only did it affect the offense for this team, but they really just went down after that happened. Now, this was a team that was riddled with injuries, and that was the Cincinnati Bengals. I argue they were one of the most injured teams in the NFL last season. It was just injury after injury after injury, and one of their best players went down. And if he didn't go down, he was going to have quite possibly one of the best seasons of his career, and that was A.J. Green.
Yeah, I saw his potential at the beginning of the season because I actually drafted him in fantasy football this year. So I saw his potential. That one game where he had 3 touchdowns in the first half, amazing. But you talked about A.J. Green is a total package. We all know he's probably one of the top 5 receivers in the NFL. But he still gets the job done. He had 46 receptions, 694 yards. He had 6 touchdowns, and you touched about it. His season got ended short. And I'm pretty sure if A.J. Green had, more than half the season under his belt, he would have been maybe a Pro Bowler or, first team All-Pro, because he was just that good this season. It's terrible to see great players go down really early in the season. I've always said it, injuries can happen out of nowhere and it can hurt your team out of nowhere. The Bengals were, like you said, one of the most injury-riddled teams this season. You had the Packers, one of them, the Jaguars were another one, and the Bengals were up there too. They had a lot of potential at the beginning of the season, and it just all fell apart. Now they're looking at probably being the last-place team in their division this upcoming season, with the Browns making moves, Baltimore making moves, Pittsburgh, being Pittsburgh. Cincinnati's in a struggle right now, and a lot has to do with that offense. A.J. Green cannot do it himself. We've talked about this. Jeremy Hill was he had a great season this year, but Andy Dalton's not the answer anymore. Marvin Lewis wasn't the answer. That's why they fired him, but Andy Dalton's still not the solution. So I want to know how A.J. Green's going to come back from this injury. It's very hard for an injury like this, especially when you're just as old as him. So we'll see how A.J. Green does it, but he had a tremendous season this last year, and I look forward for, many years to come. It just depends on how that injury progresses, but he is the building block. I don't know if he is anymore, but he's probably the best player the Bengals have right now on the entire team.
Yeah, and he goes for 694 receiving yards. I did a little calculations while you were talking. He would have finished the year, if he played all 16 games, with 1,233 yards, almost 234 yards. That would have been the fourth best season of his career in terms of receiving yards. So, I mean, he's a 7-time Pro Bowler. He's an all-class guy as well. And when a guy like him goes down, it really affects your offense. And didn't Cincinnati start this year like 5-1 along those lines? They were one of the hottest teams in the NFL. They were rolling, and I mean, they were rolling. You know, they could have potentially gone and took that momentum and win the North. There's a potential for that, you know, and it didn't happen. It started with AJ Green going down. You know, he had a nagging injury already, and then he finally went down with that injury. So. Tough, AJ Green, but he's still one of the best receivers in the NFL. And with the way that he was playing, we thought that he deserved to be on this list, especially with that Thursday Night Football first-half performance against the Ravens. The Ravens, too, which is one of the best defenses in the NFL in 2017.
Yeah, 3 touchdowns in that game. 3. Our fantasy bureau were like, are you kidding me? 3. Yeah. I was happy that week. Oh, boy, I wasn't happy, but...
I think I played you that week. I think I did. It was horrible.
I love that week. That was a good thing about my fantasy.
I was on the road. I wasn't even here. I was like out of town, and I was like, I got in.
Weren't you at the Jaguars?
I was at the Jaguars game.
Yeah.
And then I showed up. I landed, and I was like, what's going on? And then I saw the score, and I looked at the stats, and I was like, of course, that always happens in fantasy.
It does, but you know, AJ Green is one of my favorite Bengals players. So I mean, I wanted to get out of Cincinnati so bad, just like Andrew Whitworth did, but you know. AJ Green's going to get paid somewhere. I hope it gets soon, but, you know, I want to come back from injury so bad, but, you know, his time is officially, it's running out. But AJ Green will come back with a stronger season. Now, I'm going to talk about a guy that I also had in fantasy football this year. He comes in at the number 88 spot, and that is Sony Michel, ladies and gentlemen, the running back for the New England Patriots from the University of Georgia. And, you know, when you have a 3 running back system, you know, like this season in New England, Sony Michel, for some reason, felt, you know, out of place in the beginning of the season, but he turned it all around. He had over 931 rushing yards, 6 touchdowns. He's not the best pass-catching running back, so that doesn't surprise me that he only had 7 receptions for 50 yards. But he was picked in the first round for a reason, and, you know, we saw him in Georgia with the 2-back set with him and Chubb down there in Georgia, and he produced. He produced 6 touchdowns, you know, in the regular season. That's not as much for a running back what you want, but the reason why he made this list, Lorenzino, is because of his tremendous playoff performance this entire postseason. He dominated the ground this year. That second game New England had in the playoffs, he dominated. He absolutely dominated. And when you talk about a young running back in the NFL that just came into the rookie season, of course you're going to say Saquon Barkley and you're going to say Chubb down there in Cleveland. But Sony Michel this year was super quiet only because he had James White and Rex Burkhead behind him. And you talk about a running back that's probably going to make the biggest impact next season, it might be Sony Michel. Now, beg to differ that the Giants might give Saquon Barkley 50 carries per game now that there's nobody in the Giants offense. But you talk about a guy that's in a really good system in New England and, you know, is utilized very, very well as Sony Michel. This season he proved it. I can't wait to see next season. I mean, he was a guy that is going to be on top of everybody's fantasy football boards next season. This guy's just so good with the ball in his hands, and I can't wait to see more out of him in his sophomore season.
Yeah, he scores 6 touchdowns in the playoffs. He's really what propels New England to win the Super Bowl, and he's the one that scores the touchdown in the Super Bowl as well to, you know, finally get a touchdown on the board that game. And he's just a very good young player, you know, and he was just, when he was at Georgia, you know, it was, okay, Todd Gurley's here. Okay, Nick Chubb's here. Okay, now it's Sony Michel. And then when it was Sony Michel time, I mean, he was there with Nick Chubb. I mean, even when he was coming off as a backup, he was playing extremely well. And you just knew, I mean, it just feels like Georgia breeds really good NFL running backs like Gurley, Chubb. and then now Sony Michel, and then the next it's going to be Swift, when he declares. So, I mean, they just have so many good running backs, and Sony Michel's no exception. He's a very good fantasy player as well. And now that New England, understands the potential that he has in scoring 6 touchdowns in the playoffs, they're definitely going to use him a lot more. They're going to incorporate him a lot more. Now, obviously, James White is that specialist back, and he's still going to get a lot of carries, and he's still worth a fantasy pickup, no question. But expect Sony Michel to get a lot more production in 2019.
I can agree with that.
Yeah. And Reno, a guy just got paid, and he's next on the list at 87. Gets a 4-year, $37 million contract, and he moves from the Chicago Bears, and he goes to a rival. He goes isn't that the best thing? He goes from the Green Bay Packers from the Chicago Bears to the Green Bay Packers, and that's safety Adrian Amos.
Yeah, you talk about a guy that made the switch really just. I don't know if it's about this, but I hate when players go to the rival teams. Like, here's a big, gesture to the face, like, hey, I'm going to the rival team. But you know what? It was about the payday. And Adrian Amos was the guy that got paid. He had a great season, 73 tackles. He had a sack. He had 2 interceptions. But that secondary was all over the place for Chicago. Chicago's defense in all levels was really good. But I felt in particular the safeties and the corners were amazing. And Amos was in front and center of the secondary. You talk about a guy that can play everywhere. Whenever you needed him, he was that guy. He can cover tight ends when you needed him. You can cover the slot when you needed him. He can play press coverage when you needed him. His zone coverage if you needed him. He was just all over the field, and he deserved a big payday. He got a big payday because he played like it this season. When you came into the season, Adrian Amos wasn't the guy that you were really thinking about. You really weren't thinking about him, especially because he came into the league in 2015. He was a 5th-round pick, and no one really talked about him. And last year, he even had a quiet year, too. He had 69 tackles for an interception. But I just feel like these guys, the ones that are just quiet and, do what they have to do, they're the ones that make the biggest impact. And Adrian Amos was that guy. Now he's going into the system in Green Bay where there's a lot of youth around. There's a youth movement going around with the corners, with Jair Alexander leading the charge. They lost Ha. They bring that leadership in with Amos, who's been in the league for a couple seasons now and was a part of the best defense in the NFL last season. You talk about a team that's going to get a big upgrade, it's this team right here with Adrian Amos. This guy is going to be a threat next season. I can't wait to see it. But when you talk about a guy who could be one of the best safeties in the league, it's this guy right here.
Yeah, he's young, he's versatile, he's just a playmaker, and he fits that role as he as a very good. He fits the role of a very good safety. He can play in the box. He plays up there. You said that he can guard the slot as well. He's very versatile, and I think that's why the Green Bay Packers added him. And when you have guys like Jair Alexander and Josh Jackson, these 2 young corners, the Green Bay Packers defense struggled so much this year, but they consider the secondary. They were very young back there. Now you add Adrian Amos, who comes from a really good Chicago Bears defense. He's gonna teach them. He's gonna teach them. Hey, this is how we did it in Chicago. Let's emulate that, and let's put it in Green Bay, and let's turn it around back on Chicago. Right. I think Green Bay is gonna be a good team this year if they can bounce back. Like what you said, Reno. They had a lot of injuries too. They were also just really bad on defense. But if they can get back from those, they lost. Was it Jake Ryan? Mm-hmm. Before the season even started. If they can just piece that defense together, you can trust Aaron Rodgers, of course. The thing is, Aaron Rodgers has just never had a good defense, And now with these young guys coming in, maybe that can change. Maybe Green Bay can actually go and win the NFC North. It's going to be tough because that's a very tough division, especially with Detroit making all these moves now. They're the Detroit Patriots now, and they're really going out there and they have definitely made a footprint in free agency this year. They really have. And it's going to be a very tough division, but I think with Green Bay bolstering up that defense, it's definitely going to help.
Yeah.
Now, Reno, Jared Cook played the best season of his career.
He did.
And he played it surprisingly in Oakland, with Derek Carr throwing him the football. But he had a phenomenal season, going for 896 yards and 6 touchdowns. Who would have thought that this guy would all of a sudden be a premier fantasy football tight end. Nobody I'm pretty sure nobody had him on his boards, right?
No.
I mean, you got Travis Kelce, Rob Gronkowski was still up there at the time. Zach Ertz as well. No one thought George Kittle, he also came out of nowhere in a sense.
Yeah.
And Jared Cook comes out and he proves to be a reliable tight end at this point, which is weird at this point of his career. He's 30 years old. He's been in the league since he was 22, and now at 30, he's proved to be a threat. But he played a very good season with the Raiders, and he's actually a free agent. He could potentially be on the move.
You talk about Jared Cook, and you look at the Raiders last season. They had nobody catching the ball other than Jared Cook. We all thought last season, Martavis Bryant's coming in, Jordy Nelson, Amari Cooper. You know what's funny, Lorenzino? Those three guys that I just mentioned, none of them are on the roster right now. That's crazy. And not even Jared Cook's in the roster anymore. So big changes in Oakland. But you talk about a guy that had his best career season. It was this guy right here. You go along with the yards you said, playing at 30 years old. He had 6 touchdowns. He was a big playmaker, not only, for the Raiders, but in fantasy football too, because a lot of people had to depend on, waiver claims just to pick up Jared Cook, and he was a good waiver claim this year. There's a lot of better tight ends in this league than Jared Cook, don't get me wrong, but this last season he just had a heck of a year. Surprised he's not paid right now. He probably won't get, a lot of money paid, only because he's 30 years old. And, this was his best season. He's still in the eclipse over 1,000 yards, but that's hard to do as a tight end. But when you look at what he does, he catch the ball really good. He's fast in open field. He's just a deep ball threat when you need it the most, and Jared Cook proved it last year. I'm shocked, though, that he's still not signed. I would think his guy would be a priority in free agency, but I guess not. We're sitting here on a Friday, and he's still not picked up yet. That might change over the weekend. I'm pretty sure it will, because there's some teams that are in urgent need of a tight end. But other than that, I'm really proud of Jared Cook this year, because started his career in Tennessee. That didn't go well. Went to L.A. Well, not L.A. There was St. Louis at the time. He went with the Rams. That didn't really pan out that much. And all of a sudden, Derek Carr's his quarterback in Oakland. Magic started to happen. This year was a prime example of it. I don't know if he's going to get picked up, anytime soon, but Jared Cook, that's a guy you really have to look at in free agency, because you look at the flags there and be like, he's 30, but look what he produced on the football field this last season. I'm just saying the production was there. He was a good tight end last year for a team that really needed it. I mean, if you guys need a tight end, I think you had to get this guy rather than Tyler Eifert, who's had injuries, because he had a breakout season, and Eifert's just been injury prone. But that's my opinion. Jared Cook makes this list this year because he was so good, and he deserves to get paid. Pay him the money, people. Just pay him the money. Pay him the money.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a Jaguars fan. I'm going to make the pitch that we should go and sign a guy like Jared Cook. We just signed Jeff Swain, who I just learned how to say his last name. It's Swain. So I think we should go we got him. He's a run-blocking tight end. Jacksonville still needs somebody who's going to catch passes, because Nick Foles, he was extremely successful in part because he is a pretty decent quarterback, but also because he had a very good pass-catching tight end in Zach Ertz. And a lot of Nick Foles' passes and his security blanket, it was Zach Ertz. Now, he needs a tight end to be successful, Nick Foles does. So go get somebody like Jared Cook, or go get Tyler Eifert. I argue that when Tyler Eifert's healthy, he's a top 8 tight end in the NFL. He has been a red zone threat. He has gotten the yards, and when he is healthy, he's a Pro Bowler. I mean, if you look at the stats, he's a Pro Bowler when he's healthy, and he is a red zone threat. The thing is, can he be healthy? Yeah, Jared Cook's good. He had a breakout season. Do you trust it, though? If I'm Jacksonville, I'm fine with signing either of them. But personally, I'll take the risk, and I'll go for Eifert, and I'll see if I can get my red zone threat. Now, Reno, we had an argument about this. We've talked about this for a while until I finally got my way.
Oh God.
85, Reno, is Stephon Diggs, and a little bit later when we talk about somebody named Alshon Jeffrey, this will make a little bit more sense as argument.
No.
But Stephon Diggs, Reno, Minneapolis Miracle. The guy goes for over 1,000 yards, and there's a part of your argument right there. On 102 receptions,
Yep.
he played a very good season, and in a surprisingly not very good offense for the Minnesota Vikings with Kirk Cousins chucking him the football. But Stephon Diggs is a good player, Reno. But I'll hand this one over to you, and I will talk a little bit more about the other receiver.
Well, I mean, I don't know what to think here. I mean, Stephon Diggs this season really had himself a season. It wasn't as good as last season. You know, the playoff run really helped him last year. That's why his season was good. But he did better this year in receptions. But he almost doubled his receptions from 2017 to 2018. He had 64 in 2017. He had 102. Big correlation. He doubled that. When you talk about yards, he was at 849. He went from 1,021. Big comparison. Touchdowns, he went from 8 to 9. So he improved in touchdowns. You see these numbers, Lorenzino? He's improving. This offense was great in the first half. Fantastic, great. Nobody can stop the Vikings. It was either Thielen or Diggs. And if we're being completely honest, I need a playmaker. And Alshon Jeffrey's just not that guy that I want on the team. I need a guy that's fast. I need a guy that can catch. I need a guy that can make plays. And it's Stephon Diggs. This guy, Stephon Diggs, was just amazing last season. Yeah, yet again, the whole Kirk Cousins thing happened. But, I mean, come on. When you think of talent alone, who would you rather have? Alshon Jeffrey or Stephon Diggs? I'm taking Stephon Diggs because I've seen what he can do. I've seen what he can do in the playoffs. Yes, we all know what Jeffrey can do in the Super Bowl, and you know what? He's a great player. He's got that 50-50 ball down. But other than that, he's nothing. I haven't seen Alshon Jeffrey do anything else but that. Diggs can do everything. A curl run, a slant, vertical. You name it, Diggs can do it. And that's what I look about this list because when you talk about a receiver that can do everything, you think AB, Julio, Odell, some of the premier guys in the league. Sure, both of these guys that we're talking about aren't probably top 10 receivers at the moment, but when you talk about their seasons last year, I mean, in my opinion, I'm taking Stephon Diggs. I saw what he can do. First half in the season, boy, oh boy, that guy was a fantasy football machine. Anybody can argue that. And Alshon Jeffrey just didn't do much this season. You know, the yards weren't there, touchdowns weren't there. He was injury prone too. I mean, there's a big comparison. But you know, Diggs deserves to be higher on this list, in my opinion. I don't even think he should be in the 80s. I think he should be probably in next week's episode in the 70s. But I mean, this guy he's one heck of a wide receiver, and he deserves to be on this list. But I'm gonna be like, you know, Mike Daniels every year, 85 man, who made this list? But this guy deserves to be higher on the list this season. So, but yeah, your opinion on this? Your thoughts on this?
No, I'll get to Alshon. I'll get to Alshon.
Okay. I mean, go right ahead. But we'll go to 84 then, Lorenzino. And the guy that we want for 84, he really broke out this season, and that was William Jackson, the cornerback for the Cincinnati Bengals. When you talk about, you know, the Bengals secondary, there's some guys making plays, but when a couple years ago in 2016, when the Bengals took William Jackson third in the first round with a 24th overall pick, they knew they wanted him for a reason. Now, his rookie year, he did get hurt, didn't play a single snap, but this year he had a breakout year. He had 41 tackles, which is good for a corner. But also another stat, he was targeted in the top 5 least amount of times in the top 5. I don't remember the stat, but he was targeted, non-existent because everybody knows what he can do. And he didn't have any picks this year, but when he comes to the best corners in the NFL, young corners in the NFL, of course you have to think, Jalen Ramsey's the best young corner in the NFL. But William Jackson's pretty good too. Not on the same level. I think Ramsey's on a different level than Jackson, but I mean, William Jackson, 24th pick, they picked him for a reason, and they got it out of him this year. He was just so good with the ball. He's lengthy too. He's got the jumping ability. He's got great hands. He's got everything you need in a corner. Technically, this was his second season, really figuring out how to play in the NFL, what to do. But When you talk about his resume so far, he's locked down some of the most premier wide receivers in the game. He locked down Jarvis Landry. He locked down Antonio Brown already. We've already seen him lock down some of the best. And, he's very young. He's very young, Lorenzino. But when you talk about that draft class in corners, you think Jalen Ramsey was the guy. William Jackson was, going to be probably that next guy other than Eli Apple. And then we got Artie Burns, but I don't want to talk about Artie Burns. But William Jackson's now going to be the corner piece of that defense. You look about other guys around that defense, and they're all pretty old. Geno Atkins is pretty old. Burfict's pretty old. And, William Jackson's the young cat of this team. And now you have to be, okay, we got the secondary cleaned up because we got Jackson in there. Now you have to figure out the other pieces to this puzzle. But this guy is a dog. And I'm really excited to see what he can do next season because he's gonna have himself a field day in that division next year. Juju Smith-Schuster is gonna be a guy he's gonna be guarding. We always talk about Juju, but now in Cleveland, Jarvis Landry yet again. Odell Beckham Jr. is gonna be his new target to look at. I'm gonna be really impressed if he can lock down both of those guys in Cleveland because if he can lock down both of those guys, he can probably be a top 5 cornerback right now at this young age, but William Jackson III deserves to be on this list. And, Lorenzino comes in at 84, which is a perfect spot for him because I think he can increase his top 100 overall next year.
Yeah, I mean, his stats aren't there, but I think that's kind of what you want from a cornerback, right? You don't really want him to get a lot of tackles because that's what your linebackers and your defensive linemen are supposed to do. You don't really want him to be targeted that much. So, I mean, yes, you want the interceptions, of course. But if he's not being targeted at all, well, then that's a good thing, and those are some of the things that people don't really see. And Jackson kind of fits that mold, He fills those stats that you don't see. He doesn't get targeted that much. He's got the PBUs and all of that. He's a very good young corner. And, like what you said, if he's healthy, he's going to be one of the best in the NFL. I think I don't have a top 10 list off the top of my head, but I think he fits in that top 10 if you ask me. Yeah, and like what you said, next year he'll be higher definitely. Alshon Jeffrey, here we go. So we have Alshon Jeffrey clocking in at 83, and you said, well, first of all, you said a couple things that really, they didn't upset me because he's not my player, but it just made me really scratch my head. You said that Alshon Jeffrey is nothing. Okay, Alshon Jeffrey's nothing. You said that he can't run the routes that Stephon Diggs can. Yeah, the athleticism, of course, Diggs. Yeah, he's young. He's a very young player. But the fact that you said Alshon Jeffrey can't really do much, no, the guy can run the entire route tree if he could. The guy goes deep. He runs the curls. He runs the slants. Philadelphia with Nick Foles and with Carson Wentz, it was RPOs. Who was running the slant? It was Alshon Jeffrey. That was the offense of Philadelphia, the RPOs. And, Stephon Diggs wasn't even the best receiver on his football team. That was Adam Thielen. Adam Thielen is the best receiver on the Vikings. So you're going to make me think that Alshon Jeffrey is not as good as Stephon Diggs? Alshon Jeffrey is the best receiver on his team. And if it wasn't for Alshon Jeffrey, the Eagles wouldn't even have made the playoffs. Now, Nick Foles went on a miraculous run once again. They want him. He once again put the team on his back like he did in 2016, which feels already so. Wait, 2016 or 2017? In 2017, he puts them on their back, and he wins a Super Bowl with them. Who scored that amazing touchdown in the Super Bowl? It was Alshon Jeffrey, who scored an amazing touchdown against the Vikings when they blew them out of the water in the NFC Conference Championship. It was Alshon Jeffrey. Who gets them to the playoffs because they've established a rapport? It's Alshon Jeffrey. Now, of course, it ended horribly for Alshon Jeffrey in that Philadelphia Eagles story because, first of all, Alshon Jeffrey dropped the ball into the hands of the cornerback, but why are you even running a play before the 2-minute warning? That's my big thing. Yeah, that mistake happened, and if you ask me, you got what you deserved, but as much as Alshon should have caught that because nobody was really on him, I guess maybe he heard footsteps, but just don't run that play. Be patient. You had enough time. You were at the 2-minute warning, and you were already in their territory. But Alshon has a better catch catching rate than Stephon Diggs. I mean, Alshon's at 70.5 and Stephon's at 68.6. Yes, only 843 yards on 6 touchdowns compared to Stephon Diggs. But when we're talking about plays that are going to make the team win football games, give me Alshon. Give me Alshon. Because if it's Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs, I'm throwing the ball at Adam Thielen. I'm not throwing it to Stephon Diggs. But if it's Alshon Jeffrey, then give me Alshon Jeffrey because he has continuously made plays that have helped his team win football games. And if you want to debate that, well, then go to the 2017 Super Bowl run, and then go to the reason why they made the playoffs, because they had no business making the playoffs. The Eagles really didn't. But then Nick Foles comes in, Alshon Jeffrey starts making a little bit more plays, and all of a sudden they're in the playoffs, and they beat the Chicago Bears, a team, once again, they had no business beating. They had no business beating New Orleans. All of a sudden they did, because Alshon Jeffrey made some pretty big plays that game. So that's why I'll take Alshon Jeffrey over Stephon Diggs in this top 100 list. And it's not even by a lot. He's at 83. Diggs is at 85. It's not a lot. It's not enough to, like, cry over, you know? Well, let's talk about Harrison Smith, Reno. We got 2 more, and let's talk at 82 with Harrison Smith, who is Harrison Smith is one of the best safeties in the NFL at free safety, and he just adds another element to this Minnesota Vikings defense.
I mean, talk about a guy that, is consistently really, really good. It's the hitman. It's Harrison Smith. He makes plays, and he's done it for a long time, too. This guy came in the NFL in 2012, and he's just made plays year in, year out for the Vikings. I mean, probably the one position you don't need to worry about because he's so good at what he does, and he makes plays, whether that is in coverage, he makes plays. If you need a strip fumble, it's probably him that's going to cause it. He's all over the field, and that's a safety that we have to look at and think how great this guy is, because I mean, if we're going to be honest here, Lawrence, in my opinion, he could be a Hall of Famer if he has maybe a championship underneath his belt. He's that good of a safety. And you don't see a safety like him come often. A hard-hitting safety that can, pick the ball off in midair and can make tackles when you need him to. He had 84 tackles his last season. He had 3 sacks, and he had 3 interceptions. What more do you want from him? He was so good. Last year, I mean, yes, the production did decrease when it came to interceptions, but he increased in sacks and he increased in tackles. Tackles is a thing that you do not need because, let's face it, like you touched on it earlier, corners and safeties don't need to be tackling everybody unless it's a deep ball or a slant, something like that. But, I mean, other than that, he fills in what you need at a safety position. He is there when you need him the most, and he makes the biggest plays on the biggest stages. I just wish he had a better offense around him, to be frankly real with you. But, I mean, give credit where credit's due. The defense is great at all 3 levels, but Harrison Smith makes the secondary one heck of a secondary. And, again, this guy has been in the league for such a long time, and he's already proved himself that he's been voted as the best player in Pro Football Focus. That was 2 years ago. I mean, come on. He is one heck of a player. To be voted the best player on Pro Football Focus is amazing. And you know what? He's low on this list, but he's always going to be in the top 100 because he's just that good of a dynamic safety when you need him the most. He can do everything you need him to do. And I probably already said it before, but his nickname's the Hitman for a reason. He can force the ball out, and he's done it so many times in his career. That's the guy I would want on my team, mostly because we need secondary, but when you need a guy who can make the plays, that's the guy. Hitman Smith. You call him up.
I'm looking at Pro Football Reference right now. This nickname here says the Heartbreak Kid. So which one is it?
It's the Hitman. He's jogged the ball more than breaking hearts, because I don't think he's broke hearts.
Well, you don't know him.
Maybe.
You don't know his life. He's probably broken many.
Maybe. We'll see.
But yeah, you touched. I mean, the production went down. He still made the Pro Bowl though, and safeties are one of the most coveted positions in the NFL, if you ask me, because if you're just talking about the defense in whole, if you're on the defensive line, you can be a little bit more risky, a little bit more all out when you know that you have very competent players in the backfield like a Harrison Smith, right? Oh, okay, he's got me, right? He's got me if I don't get that sack, Oh, he's keeping the quarterback, still looking around because the coverage is really good in the entire secondary that I can make a play and I have more time to get to the quarterback. And that's what a guy like Harrison Smith does. He's a 4-time Pro Bowler, and he's made the All-Pro once in his career. He has established a very good career so far, like what you said. And, yeah, he really does have the potential to be a Hall of Famer, And, Minnesota, that defense is very good. And you wouldn't think that it would be the offense that was going to let them down, But with the talent that's there on that offense, there is obviously potential to bounce back. And Minnesota, it's a tough NFC North. I said that right now when I was talking about the Packers. It's a tough NFC North. But outside of the Lions, any of those teams can win the North, And there's probably going to be 2 NFC North teams in the playoffs coming in 2019.
100%.
Last one, Reno. And I have to admit, I made fun of him at the start of the season before I even knew who this man was. We have Philip Lindsay at 81. Because I remember making fun of him because he wanted Terrell Davis's number. And I was like, who is this guy who wants a Hall of Famer's number? And then all of a sudden he ended up on my fantasy team. I don't know. It just, by week whatever it was, week 8, he was on my fantasy team. And he was one of the most productive running backs in fantasy football. I mean, he really was. And Lindsay goes for 1,037 yards and 9 touchdowns. And coming into the season, who was the guy that everybody liked in Denver? Royce Freeman, right? Oh, Royce Freeman's going to be really good. Not saying he's not going to be, but Philip Lindsay, undrafted rookie, outshined him. And he already has a Pro Bowl in his first year, and the talent that he possesses is immense. He is extremely fast with the football. He breaks off the line of scrimmage with such speed. And he is going to be a threat for the Denver Broncos. And when you have somebody like him, oh my God, if we're talking quarterback problems, let's look at Denver. We got John Elway thinking that Paxton Lynch is going to be the next guy. Then he thought it was going to be Case Keenum, and now he said today that Joe Flacco's in his prime of his career. Oh, there's quarterback problems in Denver, but it's going to make Joe Flacco's life a little bit easier when he has a guy like Philip Lindsay in the backfield.
Well, I mean, let's face it, when the Ravens were good, who did they have in the backfield? They had Ray Rice. Another small running back that can get the job done. And Philip Lindsay's a guy that can get the job done. Lorenzino, who was he drafted by this year? Do you know who he was drafted? No. Guess what? No, I'm not talking about fantasy. I'm talking about overall. Wasn't drafted by the Broncos. He was undrafted. No one picked him up. No one even thought about picking this guy up, and he comes in out of nowhere and just steals the show. You touched on over 1,000 yards, but this guy had a great season overall. One of the bright spots for the Denver Broncos. We thought it was going to be a 2-back system, but guess what? It wasn't. It didn't even matter because he literally. I remember this game. It was the Denver Broncos' Pittsburgh Steelers game. He was just all over the field. He could spin around tackles. He can get the job done when you need him to. He gets to these little holes because he's a small running back, and he's electric. He's electric with the football, and that's what you need in a running back. We talk about some of the young running backs in the league. Yes, they're built and they have muscle, but some of these small guys can just get the job done even better. And maybe he can be better in the passing game. He had almost 300 yards in total receiving yards, but overall, he was a guy that needs to be stopped. Denver doesn't look that great on offense. We saw at the beginning of the year that it just didn't work out. Case Keenum, I mean, I knew this. I knew it wasn't going to work out in Denver, but I didn't know Philip Lindsay was going to come out of nowhere with his fro and just steal his show. Made the Pro Bowl for a reason. He's a young, special kid, and I'm excited to see what the future lies in store for him because with what he came out in 2018 and what he proved to everybody what he can do, I mean, the sky, I keep saying this, but the sky's the limit. Again, for a guy that came in his rookie year undrafted and made all of this happen in such a quick time in 16 games, Denver looks to be heading to a great direction. But I don't think Joe Flacco's the answer, ladies and gentlemen. Somewhere else, something needs to happen in Denver. Probably get Tony Romo out of the broadcast booth to go join the Broncos because they did it to Peyton Manning. But Things need to change, and yes, I'm not gonna say build around Philip Lindsay because you need to build around a quarterback, but Philip Lindsay is a great running back to have, and he's gonna be on top of everybody's fantasy football priorities next season because he was just that explosive all around last season.
Yeah, and that's going to conclude the next set of 10 in our top 100, but we're going to be back next week. We'll touch a little bit more on free agency, talk about who hasn't been signed. They'll probably be signed by then, and we'll also break down 80 to 71, which Reno includes 6 defensive linemen. We're talking about the boys up front, and we're also talking about a really good offensive lineman and a guy who just got paid. He's leaving his team, and he's getting paid somewhere else. So that's gonna conclude our episode of Fully Charged. We have a Twitter. You can go follow it. It's at Fully Charged Pod. So on Twitter, at Fully Charged Pod. And also go follow The Fan Weekly. And it's at The Fan Weekly. I'm Lorenzino Estrada.
And I am Reno Del Toro.
And that was Fully Charged. Have a good one, everybody.